Good morning, friends, brothers and sisters, distinguished guests. We are gathered here today to commemorate the uprising of 1959. It is a day of great significance in our history, and we must remember, respect, and honor all those who sacrificed their lives defending our nation's freedom and independence. The brave Tibetans, men and women, nomads and farmers, monks and nuns, who came out on the streets of Lhasa on March 10, 1959, did not want to compromise their nation's freedom and independence. And so, armed with truth and justice and history, they stood firm, rose up, and revolted against the Communist Chinese illegal invasion of Tibet. Thousands of our brothers and sisters lost their lives that day as the People's Liberation Army of China mercilessly fired upon those peaceful protesters. Therefore, as we commemorate this day, we pay our deepest respect and homage to our brothers and sisters inside Tibet and in exile who have sacrificed their lives through various forms of protest against China's illegal occupation of our nation, and we vow to continue the work for the freedom and independence of Tibet and the Tibetan people until the issue of Tibet is resolved. Since 2009, an unprecedented 163 Tibetans have set themselves on fire inside Tibet and in exile, protesting China's occupation and its hardline policies. Just a few days ago, in Amdongaba, a 40-year-old father of 2 children set himself on fire. These acts of self-immolation are a clear signal of protest against the Chinese government and their rule in Tibet. The brave protesters have called for the return of His Holiness the Dalai Lama back to Tibet. They call for freedom and they call for independence for the Tibetan nation. The situation inside Tibet today is a critical one, and one that needs immediate intervention by the world community. As I speak here today, our brothers and sisters inside Tibet live under constant fear and repression. Tibetans are denied basic human rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and the freedom to assemble like we do here today. The Communist government of China does not care about human rights, justice, or democracy. But what I want to make sure today is our Chinese people, the Chinese brothers and sisters, know that we are not against the people of China, but we have a huge problem with your government, the government of China. We are here because the call for freedom of Tibet is our right, and as Tibetans, we will never ever give up the right and the fight for a free Tibet. Tibetans inside Tibet continue to resist and fight and inspire. We in exile have a lot of work to do. We have to work harder, work smarter, and make enough noise and put enough pressure on the Chinese government where they will not have any choice but to understand and recognize that the only way to move forward is to resolve the issue of Tibet. Our movement is based on truth and justice, and that's what China's afraid of. They know they can't face the truth, and so they try their best to destroy us with their propaganda, force, intimidation, and use all means to disengage our struggle. They have blatantly and even, of course, falsely labeled Tibetan Youth Congress as a terrorist organization. But what they don't realize is that such phony tactics will not intimidate us. The days of destruction and deception by the Communist Party is over. The spirit of Tibetans is stronger than ever. And yes, we may bend at times, but we will never break. We may be down, but we will rise time and time again. We may falter, but we will not fail. And with the blessings of our leader, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and the courage of our brothers and sisters inside Tibet, Tibetans from the great monasteries of Kirti to the majestic Potala in Lhasa, and from the lush green pastures and farms in Lithang to the Tsongompos in the north. Tibetans today stand firm behind our leader, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, with the goal to make his return back to Tibet a reality and restore freedom and independence for the Tibetan nation. Brothers and sisters, let us come together and realize that though one may be from Uyzang or from the beautiful regions of Amdo or Kham, the fact is that we are all Tibetans first. We stand and salute one flag, the Tibetan national flag. We stand and we sing one anthem, the Tibetan national anthem. We stand and we support one leader, His Holiness the Dalai Lama of Tibet. There is one Tibet, and for that Tibet we stand here today. Together we rise. Brothers and sisters, unity is our strength. Being divided makes us weak. We must put aside petty politics. We must put aside regionalism and politics. As there is no time to waste, Tibet continues to burn. Together we rise. Tibetan political prisoner Kusha Pandit Gyatso is perhaps the oldest one alive. Many of you may have heard of him. He often visits us in Dharamshala, and he talks about how he was inspired to live when he was in prison being tortured by the Chinese police. His message is clear. He says that we must continue to raise our voices for our brothers and sisters inside Tibet. Together we rise. Renowned Tibetan Buddhist leader Tulku Tenzing Rinpoche died in Chinese custody. Chinese government is directly responsible for his death. His niece later fled Tibet and came into exile. And one of the first things she said when she was in India is that she is here to bring justice for her uncle Tulku Tenzing Rinpoche. We stand with her. We want justice for Tulku Tenzing Rinpoche. Together we rise. Currently, Tibetan writer Tashi Wanjula, you may have heard of him too. He remains in prison. He is accused of separatism. But the irony here is that he was only promoting the Tibetan language, which is allowed by the Chinese constitution. Tashi Wanjula was considered a threat and accused of tyranny because he was a Tibetan. We demand for the release of Tashi Wanjula, and we demand for the release of all the political prisoners inside Tibet. Together we rise. For Pawa Thupten Ngojub, and for Pawa Tapela, and for all those Tibetans who have self-immolated for Tibet. Let us work to fulfill the wish of the dead and realize the hopes of the living. Let us make sure their sacrifices do not go in vain. And let's make sure that their voices are heard loud and clear. Together we rise. Today, I want to take this opportunity to salute His Holiness the Panchen Lama, to salute Rongyata, and all the unsung heroes of Tibet who stood up for truth, for justice. Together we rise. It has now been over 60 years since His Holiness the Dalai Lama, along with thousands of Tibetans, escaped into exile. Their hopes and their dreams are to return back to Tibet someday. We must make that dream come true. We can make that dream come true. Together we rise. 10 March is a day when we reflect upon history and events that unfolded in Lhasa. We must understand what that uprising was for. And most importantly, when we observe this Tibetan National Uprising Day, we must remember who we are, where we came from, and where we are headed to as a Tibetan. Pledge your commitment and responsibility for your country, and in doing so, understand that unity, hope, and strategy lies at the core of our struggle. When we Tibetans are united, we can make change. When we Tibetans remain dedicated, we can make history. And when we Tibetans fight with courage and conviction, we can make freedom. Today, I call upon the United Nations and the governments of the world to be bold and courageous in the face of adversity and hold the Chinese government accountable for their actions in Tibet. How many more Tibetans must die? How many more self-immolations must there be? We do not need any more words of solidarity, but what we need is responsibility and accountability by the world community. The issue of Tibet affects not only the Tibetan people, but the China's policies inside Tibet, politically, spiritually, and ecologically, directly or indirectly affects Asia and even the world at large. Tibet is known as the roof of the world for a reason. And if the world community does not intervene now, I am afraid it may be too late. Finally, I want to send a message to the Chinese government. The Chinese government will never be able to break the spirit of the Tibetan people. Tibetans inside Tibet and Tibetans in exile remain more defiant than ever, and unless the Beijing government changes its position on Tibet, the Tibetan people will continue to rise, resist, revolt, and our revolution will be stronger. My brothers and sisters, there will be ups and downs in our movement, but we have to be steadfast and we have to believe in our struggle. We must remain united, we must remain committed, and we must not give up hope. Change will come to Tibet. Freedom will certainly come to Tibet. We will defeat the evil forces of the Chinese Communist government. History will be vindicated, truth will be defended, and justice will prevail. Together, Tibet will be free. Thank you. Pegyalo! 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 Pegi Dakbo! Pegi Dakbo! Pegi Dakbo! Long live! Long live! Long live! Pegyalo!